Alright, so if you're into modern horror at all, you've probably seen the name Nat Cassidy popping up everywhere. I mean, the guy has just exploded onto the scene. So today, we're going to do a deep dive. We'll get into who he is, what makes his stuff so essential, and most importantly, where you should start if you want to jump into the work of one of horror's most exciting new voices. And look, you don't have to just take my word for it. Let's start with the king himself. When Stephen King, the Stephen King, calls your book a classic, well, you're not just having a good year anymore, you have officially arrived. That's the kind of quote that makes literally everyone sit up and take notice. And it's not just King. The critics are right there with him. Esquire didn't just say, hey, this guy's pretty good. No. They called him one of the writers shaping horror's next golden age. A golden age. That's a huge statement. It puts him right at the very front of the pack. So, what's all the hype about? Let's get into it. So yeah, why all the hype? Well, like I said, it isn't just one or two big names. The praise for Nat Cassidy is more like a tidal wave. You got all these super respected voices in horror, and they're all basically saying the same thing. Pay attention. Something really special is happening here. I mean, just look at this list. It's an absolute who's who of horror and, well, cool people. You've got Joe Hill, Stephen King's son and an absolute legend himself, Grady Hendrix, a guy who totally changed the game, the one and only Ramsey Campbell, and hey, even Patton Oswalt is on board. The message here is loud and clear. Nat Cassidy is the real deal. No question about it. Okay, so this begs the question, right? How does a writer just show up with a voice this strong, this fully formed right from the get-go? Where did all this talent for building dread and tension in these incredible characters even come from? Well, here's the secret. He's not actually a new artist. Not really. Nat Cassidy's superpower as a novelist, it comes from his whole other career. He's been a professional actor and an award-winning playwright for years, so he's been sharpening these exact skills just in a different arena. And this dual background, it's the absolute key to everything. Think about it. On one side, you have the actor. He's playing the bad guy of the week on shows like Law & Order and Blue Bloods. To do that, you have to get inside a villain's head, right? You have to understand the monster. Then, on the other side, you have the writer. He's a Bram Stoker-nominated playwright. He's mastered dramatic structure, pacing, and that slow burn tension that just gets under your skin. And this really sums it all up, in his own words. For him, they're the same thing. Acting, writing, it's all just extreme long-form empathy. It's not two separate jobs. His entire career has been about one thing. Getting inside a character's skin, whether they're a hero or a villain, and understanding them from the inside out. That is the engine that makes his books so powerful. Okay, so we've got the how. We see how he builds these incredible scares. But what about the why? Why horror? Why this genre? Well, it turns out there's a really deep and actually kind of beautiful philosophy behind all the madness. Here's the thing you have to understand about his work. It's not just about jump scares or gore. Not at all. For Nat Cassidy, horror is a tool. It's a survival tool, actually. It's this incredible way for us to face our biggest fears, but in a safe space, to look right into the darkness and realize we can walk out the other side, stronger for it. And he's even got a name for this whole idea, which I absolutely love. He calls it morbidly affirmative horror. Think about that. The idea is that good horror doesn't tell you your fears are silly. It affirms them. It says, you know what? The world is a scary place sometimes, and it's okay to be afraid. But then it gives you this safe playground to confront those fears head on and prove to yourself that, yeah, you can handle it. And here he is explaining it himself. He says it lets us proactively lay claim to our fears. What a phrase. It means instead of just waiting for anxiety to jump out at you from a dark alley in your real life, you choose to walk into the haunted house in a book. You get to meet the monster on your terms. And when you close that book, you've learned something. You survived. It's almost like therapy, but with way more monsters. It's brilliant. All right, so by now you're probably thinking, okay, I'm in, I get the background, I get the philosophy, but where do I start? Perfect. Let's get practical. Here is your official reading guide to Nat Cassidy. So here are the big four, his major horror books so far. And what you see right away is the range. Holy cow, the range. We're going from deep psychological horror to a brutal slasher to a high-octane fairy tale thriller. This is not a guy who's content to stay in one lane. He's exploring completely different flavors of fear with every single book. Okay, if you're going to start anywhere, this is it. Mary. This was his huge breakout novel, a bestseller, and for very, very good reason. It is this absolutely brilliant and frankly super unsettling story about a middle-aged woman who feels invisible to the world, and then she figures out how to turn that invisibility into a weapon. It digs into these really potent real-world fears about getting older, about being ignored, and just twists them into pure nightmare fuel.
All right, next up, have you ever lived in an apartment building and just gotten a weird vibe from your neighbors? If the answer is yes, you have to read Nestlings. This book is all about that specific, creeping dread of city living. You know, you're packed in with hundreds of other people, but you have no clue what's really going on behind all those other doors. It is pure, bottled, claustrophobic terror.
Now, if you're in the mood for something faster, something bloodier, then his novella Rest Stop is what you're looking for. This thing got nominated for a Bram Stoker Award, and it's a perfect modern slasher. But what's so great about it is that it's not just a slasher. It mixes that visceral, in-your-face violence with these really heavy, smart themes about historical trauma. It's brutal, but it's also incredibly intelligent.
And that brings us full circle, back to the book that Stephen King himself called a classic. When the Wolf Comes Home feels like a movie. It's this wild, high-speed thriller that pulls from dark fairy tales, but also from 80s action horror movies like Terminator 2. It's basically one long, intense chase scene about a woman protecting a kid with some seriously scary powers. This is the book that just proves he's a master of pure, page-turning storytelling.
And hey, here's a little insider tip for you. As you're reading, keep an eye out for a bookstore. It's called Keats and Yeats. You'll spot it in Mary, and then again in Nestlings, and again in Wolf. It's a clue that these books are all happening in the same universe, a kind of unofficial trilogy. It's just a cool little Easter egg for people who are paying attention, and it adds this whole other layer to the experience.
So I want to leave you with this question, because it really gets to the core of what Nat Cassidy's work and maybe all great modern horror is really asking. In these stories, in these nightmares, what role were we playing? The ghosts or the haunted? Are we the victims of the scary things in the world, or are we maybe part of the haunting ourselves? It's a heavy thought to sit with, and it's exactly that kind of deep, unsettling question that will make you remember his books long after you've finished them.